Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Video Mail for the week of August 22nd, 2011. Thank you for coming to the site. To the new members, welcome back to the old. Don't forget, the Ask Video Mail is your chance to get your question in character animation or performance answered in a video just like this one, but you got to send in your question if you want it answered. So please send it to webmaster@kennyroy.com. I promise to look through all the questions, and I do answer the ones I think will help the most people. So along those lines, this week's Ask Video Mail question actually comes from the forums. I actually saw a thread that I wanted to chime in on, and I think that you'll all agree that it affects us all very much, especially if you're a working animator. Before I get to that though, I've had a couple people order from the store, and they said that they didn't receive their email. If you don't receive your email when you have an order from the store within like 20 minutes, then send me an email. But check your spam first. See in your spam box if there's anything from webmaster@kennyroy.com with a order. It says like new order at kennyroy.com, and then at the bottom there's a download link and a download password. Okay, so again, if you don't receive it within minutes, like wait like an hour max before you email me, and I'm glad to hunt through the server and try to find your order, and normally I can find it in 5 minutes, so no big deal. Okay, but thank you for supporting the site, for everyone who is ordering from the store and all that. So Alex's question is right here. This is not a normal Ask Video Mail, so we're not going to go to the blue screen with the yellow text. We're just going to read it. So what Alex was wondering is if I've used a 6x9 Intuos 4 Wacom on a dual display. First of all, it is Wacom. If you call the company and if you go to SIGGRAPH and talk to them about their product, they all say Wacom. Now everyone says Wacom, some people say Wacom or Wacom, but it is Wacom. So I don't know, I just thought that you might want to know how they pronounce it at least. So the Intuos 4 Wacom on a dual display setup. And what Alex aptly pointed out was that I'm using a Intuos 3, it's a medium, it's the 6x8, and I have dual displays. Now, there's a couple things you absolutely have to know about this, but first let me tell you a little anecdote about ergonomics in general. So when I first started at ILM, I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and so excited to be there, and I did a little bit of desk hopping because they didn't really have a place for me to sit. There was this apprenticeship program that they were running where they took like the top, dozen CalArts grads or so, and told them if you can learn the computer, basically you have a job. So the best people from CalArts, they gave them a shot, like animating, I think, the T-Rex from Jurassic Park, and if you could do that, then you had a job. But I wasn't part of that program. I was brought up at the exact same time, but I wasn't a CalArts grad. I was actually fresh out of high school, and I was just stuck with this animator who actually really didn't want me, but I won her over, and reluctantly she basically became my mentor, and we have a fantastic relationship now, and she's just absolutely the best. But again, I had to do a lot of desk hopping in the beginning because I just didn't have a place for me to sit. So I remember this first place I sat was like in this hallway, and then they moved me to this building, and there was this corridor, and it would like open up, and there'd be these like little rooms where you could sit, and there was a lot of these, and I remember that I sat and the desks were actually facing the hallway, so you didn't feel like people were like rushing by behind you. That's kind of a bad feeling to have when people are working. So you're sitting, and I remember I looked directly across the hallway or the corridor, and there was this guy, and he was sitting at a desk opposite me, and every single day he'd just come in and he'd fold his arms and just stare at his monitor. And so this went on for days and days and days and weeks. And eventually I started thinking to myself, as bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as I was and excited to be on the job, I just thought to myself, like, man, nobody has, the such a bad attitude that they'll just come in and not work for weeks and weeks and weeks. Like, this guy must be seriously burned out. I don't know what this guy's problem is. But it was a little weird because a couple times during those weeks, people would come by his desk and look at what he was doing and then walk away as if, it was good work or that he was actually working. But I promise you, for 8 hours straight, he just fold his arms like this and just stare at his desk. Eventually, I got up the nerve to go over there and ask him what he was doing. And when I came around on his side of the desk, I noticed that he didn't have a mouse. He had little foot pedals. He was using a foot mouse. And I asked him why he was using a foot mouse. And he said because him and his friend both blew their wrists out working on a film that had been an ILM a couple years before. Just completely blew their wrists. Can't use their wrists for anything anymore. The wrists are done. And he said his friend actually had developed foot problems with the foot mouse. So his friends just had bad joints, but he was okay with the foot mouse. And his friend actually was using a head mouse now. And I told him to be careful because if you blow your neck, then you're done. So he needs to be careful. But the point of the story was that from that instant onward, I decided to not stop until I found an ergonomic solution that was going to work for me. And you ought to as well. And I have to say, if it wasn't for Wacom, I would not be sitting in front of you right now, because I was a gamer as a high schooler as well, an avid gamer. I played games, first-person shooters on the PC, like 6 hours a day at least. I was totally addicted. And you play too much, you just start to develop that RSI in your wrist as well. So I knew that I had kind of run the clock out on my wrist even before my career had started. So it was extra important to do that. So the first Wacom I got, it was from it was actually from my father's office. He brought it home, and it was something that a computer-aided designer was using and wasn't using it anymore. And the first Wacoms is funny because they were only for like print and like CAD. They weren't really like painterly precise tools. They were more like a tool that like an architect would use. It was weird. And because of that, they were so big. I remember the first Wacom I had was like this big. It was like 40 inches, like maybe not that big. Let me see here. It was bigger than, maybe it was like maybe 28 inches across. It was huge. And it had a pen, no buttons on the pen. It was just whatever. And instantly I felt better. My wrist started feeling better. And here's why. If you don't know the reason why RSI occurs, is because if you repetitively bend your wrist left and right, you are working the joint and you are damaging the nerves and the tendons that go through the carpal tunnel. Okay? There's like a bundle up in here. Okay? So that's basically the bad motion. Okay? This is okay. You can get away with a lot more of this. This is the way your wrist is supposed to bend. It's not great. You don't want to do this too much either, but this is much better. Okay? So with a traditional mouse, you're moving it around, and relative to your forearm, you're twisting it like this. With a handshake mouse, which is a mouse that basically is up on its side, you move it around and your hand is on the side. And if you are moving it a little bit, guess what movement you're getting? You're actually getting the bend forward and bend back, and that's okay. All right, it's still not great. It's still not fantastic, but you'll get a lot more. You'll get 10 times more mileage out of your wrist if you bend it 1,000 times this way than this way. Okay, and actually, I get a little bit of a tingle. It's a little sore when I do that. Why a pencil is so good is because you are actually you can lock your wrist. And you don't have to actually put any stress on your wrist at all, because the natural pen grip movement comes from your arm, comes from your shoulder and your elbow. And you can get RSI in your shoulder and your elbow, but again, the bigger the muscle you use, basically, the more mileage you'll get out of it. Okay? So you'll have arthritic fingers from keyboarding far before you actually like blow your shoulder from using the Wacom like this. Okay, and so you'll see I do a little bit of bending, but again, it's the good bend, you know. But for the most part, I'm actually centering this movement up here. Okay, so that's what you need to go for. First and foremost is good ergonomics, Alex and everybody. If you don't have a Wacom, you really, I feel like the clock is ticking for you. And I promise Wacom's not spending a dime. I'm not getting paid by Wacom. I'm not, I don't have any sponsors or advertisers on the site besides Animation Mentor. Okay, so this is all just me saying this from the bottom of my heart and being totally truthful with you. If it were not for this magical device, I would not be here right now. I would have blown my wrists out 10 years ago. Easy. Okay? And so the next piece of my ergonomic solution that you might have seen is this little handy thing right here. This is called an ErgoRest. What it is it's basically it's just like a what do you call it? A platform that spins and rotates just basically on this arm, and it's held up, okay, and your forearm goes right here. Now, this is not ideal as well. Ideally, you want everything freely floating. You want your muscles holding up your hands, like when you're typing, whatever. But again, if you, and the worst part about keyboarding is that most people rest their wrist, boom, right here on the edge of their keyboard. And what that does is, while you're doing that bad carpal tunnel movement, you're putting even more pressure and causing even more nerve damage by resting it right here. So this is bad, but pressure plus it bent backwards and then doing it is even worse. So keyboarding around like this is terrible. So at least what this does, it's still grounding it out, but instead of grounding my motion right here, it grounds it back here in my forearm. And you'll see that I pretty much have full range of movement with this device. And now I saw this, the first time I saw this was at ILM, but I got my first one at R&H. And R&H was nice enough to buy one for me. I had to leave it when I left, of course. It was theirs, but when I arrived, I knew, like, oh my gosh, I want an ErgoRest. Can you buy an ErgoRest? And they were nice enough to. Okay, so this is another thing that has basically extended the life of my keyboarding hand. I still have a problem at the end of a day. In fact, if I go like this, I feel my bones and my muscles like click into place. This is the claw. This is spacebar to full screen it, and here's QWE, and the pinky just tucks away because the pinky doesn't do anything. So translate, rotate, scale, and maximize window. It's like the claw, and so I have to work out my hand a little bit. I have a rubber band ball for that, so you should get one of those as well. If you're not taking ergonomics seriously, you're not taking your career seriously. I truly believe. You're basically leaving to chance your ability to work, your ability to perform. Okay? So that is just absolutely, that you're rolling the dice. I don't understand that. All right. So now I want to show you the one feature of Wacom that you have to be using with dual monitor setups. Rule number one, you have to force proportions on your tablet. Yeah, I don't have a widescreen tablet here, but even if you do, the widescreen aspect ratio is not exactly the resolution of your screen. The reason you have to force proportions is because you don't want to be getting more movement left and right than you are up and down. If you draw a perfect circle on the Wacom, it won't be a perfect circle on the screen. So you want that to translate one-to-one. Yes, you're going to lose on a full screen Wacom like mine. You're going to lose a substantial strip at the bottom, unfortunately. But on a widescreen, you'll only lose a little bit for that precision to get that back, to gain that back. So you have to force proportions. Okay. The next thing I need to show you is how to set up your Wacom to be dual monitor setup compatible. On the Wacom properties, you'll see that the pen mapping, mine is force proportions is checked, of course, but my screen area is only set to monitor 1. If I click on monitor 2, you'll see that the proportions have shrunk to basically match my monitor 2. Okay, but that doesn't matter because what we need is just one monitor mapped to the tablet because we're going to be using the display toggle. Okay, so check this out. If you go to functions and then I like to disable the touch strip on the Intuos 3. I don't think it was put in a very smart place. On the Intuos 4 it's much better. All of that interactivity is much better on the Intuos 4, and obviously on the Cintiq I have a 21UX right here and the touch strip is on the back. It's a perfect place for it. It's amazing, it's wonderful. So you have to map one of these buttons to display toggle, all right? And this is what that does. If you choose the display toggle tab, you can see when you hit the button, it will go from the current setting from your mapping tab, and I unchecked monitor 1 because monitor 1 is the current setting from the mapping tab, and then to monitor 2, all right? So I'm going to show you how this works because basically you can get actually greater speed and greater accuracy from your Wacom tablet if you're using display toggle, because you can zip around without having to move your hand. Okay, so check this out. This is me just working. I'm moving objects around, I'm opening menus, I'm throwing them over onto my other monitor. When I need to go grab something that's on the other monitor, I just hit the display toggle button and I fly back and forth and I can pick it up. So as you can see here, if I had one Wacom tablet, that even if it was widescreen, okay, and I was forcing proportions on that, two widescreen monitors force proportions on even a widescreen monitor, you're going to use like half the tablet, and you're paying for it. So that's ridiculous, especially if you consider that it's so much faster to just pop that button and you're over on the other monitor. Your speed will double. I promise you. Ever since they added this feature of display toggle to the Wacom, my speed has doubled. I'm flying around, as you can probably see. Okay? So that is absolutely definitely the way I work. One more thing you might have noticed is that I have this thing. This is called a smudge guard. I've already pointed this out in a video mail, but I might just plug it one more time. They're not giving me any money either. This is just a product that I know and I love. It's called Smudge Guard. It is basically just a little polyester glove, and it covers your pinky. So all you do is just pop it on, and you slide your hand around, and it just glides really, really, really nicely on your tablet. And you can even, you know, I like to keep it on because if I switch over to my Cintiq, then I can hop on the Cintiq with the Smudge Guard, and you know, my hand just glides around. And it does two things. It protects the screen and the tablet from dirt and you know, accumulating and building up. It also protects your hand, because at the end of the day, if you've been tableting all day, your skin gets kind of like shiny and you like rub off your fingerprints. So that's no good. And this is a very cheap product. I think it's like $10, something like that. It's like $10 or like $14 for the Smudge Guard. So it's a really nice investment. If you can't afford a Wacom, and you can't afford a Ergo Rest. This is a piece of medical equipment, so it's actually very expensive. This is like $80, which is a little ridiculous, this one. So I'm not too happy about how much those cost. But if you can't afford any of this, I really, first of all, look again. See if you can. Scrape together enough money. Maybe get an Intuos 3. You don't have to get the Intuos 4. You know, eBay it or something. But really look into it. I was told this by one of my friends who's an animator. He said, how do you think that the 9 old men animated until they were, you know, 70 years old? How do you think they did it? It's because they were using a pencil their whole lives. He said, you think we're going to see any 70-year-old, you know, computer animators? No, they're all going to blow their wrists. And this was someone who actually blew their wrists as well. He worked a little bit too hard on at Blizzard. Okay, so I've seen my friends drop like flies because of bad ergonomics and not taking it seriously. I'm not qualified, just by the way, I'm not qualified to really talk to you about your chair, but I do have you can see it's a nice Aeron chair, and it does have the lumbar support, and I try to sit nice and straight. We really all should supposedly be at standing desks, but that's a whole nother story. Last thing I want to point out, this is a Razer gaming mouse. Gaming mice are awesome for general purpose use, because they are highly accurate and they have a very high frame per second and they have a very high DPI, so they're very accurate. The reason you might want a really accurate mouse is because there is 2 different possible setups for your mouse that could work for you in an ergonomic way. The first setup is if you have your, and this is what I have, you have your mouse set extremely sensitively, so that you only need to move just a tiny bit. You probably can't even see how much I'm moving. Just a tiny bit to make huge moves. And the reason that helps is because if you absolutely have to use a mouse, then you're not moving around really at all. And the only way to get used to that is just to turn your sensitivity way up and then just practice with it. It's really all you can do. Or you turn it way, way, way down. Reason being is because then you'll have to, and you can see how big my mouse pad is. I have a gigantic mouse pad right here. That gigantic mouse pad means that if I turn it way, way down, then I have to move my hand like this to get it around. At least I'm using my shoulder and my elbow to move it around and not my wrist like this. The worst is when you're at like medium sensitivity, because then you're doing all your moves by moving your hand back and forth like this. That is the absolute worst. So you can either make it super sensitive, so you're doing tiny little movements and not too much damage to your wrist, or turn it way, 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 way dull and then move it around like this. So to answer Alex's question, a medium Intuos 4 is more than enough for monitor setups, even 24-inch monitors. Why? Because with display toggle, you actually get basically 2 tablets in one. You won't have the problem of running out of tablet area at all. Okay. I'm getting a medium actually to replace this Intuos 3. I'm getting a 4 medium. Okay. And as you can see here, I have a full screen Intuos and a 21-inch Cintiq and a 24-inch LCD. And even the full screen is plenty. So it is absolutely, you do not have to get the biggest and the best and the most expensive tablet to cover your area. But I did want to talk just a little while seriously to everybody about taking ergonomics a lot more seriously. Okay? Please invest in at least a Wacom, and then maybe an ErgoRest if you can afford. And then the Smudge Guard is a nice little, just like a little extra to have to make the whole experience a little bit nicer. Okay. Thank you for putting a question in the forums. It's nice to kind of go in there and look around, see what people are talking about. But if you want your question on character animation or performance answered in a video mail, you got to send it to me. So please send more questions to webmaster@kennyroy.com, and I promise we'll all have a great time kicking butt together. Good luck with your animation, and as always, rock on.